Paul Bessire of PredictionMachine.com now breaking down Super Bowl 49. And Paul, as we are just a little over 2 days out from this game, what's popping out to you in this matchup? What is the best position matchup that intrigues you the most?
I think what intrigues me the most is clearly Brady versus that secondary and that defense for the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, Brady is an all-timer, a legend, et cetera, and the Seahawks defense has not only been one of the better we've ever seen in the secondary at least, but also it's already slayed a few giants here in recent years, in recent weeks even, with Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning last year, et cetera. So that's really where I think the intrigue is, though I think it's ultimately a stalemate according to our numbers. We have Tom Brady throwing for 235 yards on 38 passes with about a touchdown and a half on average and a little bit less than an interception. So it's not great, but by no means is that terrible against the Seahawks defense. I'm not sure that's where the game's won or lost, but it's certainly compelling.
Paul, we also are hearing a lot of chatter that Gronkowski's not that good. He's just big. He's this, he's that. What kind of props are out there for Gronkowski versus the Seahawks?
Yeah, we're almost exactly in line with what Vegas has for the props, which is about 5.5 catches, 72.5 yards, and more likely than not to score a touchdown. We have him at 6 catches, 71 yards, and about 80% of the time he catches a touchdown in the games that we simulate. So I think he has a good game that's basically in line with what Vegas has. But what's interesting is that still leads to a prediction that's not all that favorable for New England. I'm sure we'll get to in a second. He is the most important player to this game, period, though, at least his performance is. So it doesn't necessarily mean him, but his overall numbers will have to look very strong, I think, for New England to ultimately go on to win this game, because Seattle is actually one area in which they're below average of all the metrics I looked at, strength of schedule adjusted, et cetera, is that they don't defend the tight end very well. The last time they gave up more than 2 touchdowns passing in a game, it was all 3 of the touchdowns that Phil Rivers threw in week 2 went to Antonio Gates. I know that was a long time ago, but those are the kind of players that can hurt this team down the seam, and Gronkowski is the perfect embodiment of that.
Paul Bessire of PredictionMachine.com getting us ready for Super Bowl 49. Armin in the back. We're live in Phoenix on Radio Row, our final day. All thanks to Bud Light. We're up for whatever. Paul, so many NFL analysts have told us that the most interesting matchup for them is Bill Belichick against Russell Wilson. What is he going to take away from Russell Wilson? What can he take away from Russell Wilson to slow down this Seattle offense? What are you seeing in the numbers there?
That's a good question. I think you have to contain Russell Wilson. That's the key. But what's interesting with our numbers is we have the over in terms of the prop opinion on everything related to the Seattle Seahawks running game. We have the over for Marshawn Lynch's rushing yards at over 100 is our number. 92.5 is the Vegas number. Robert Turbin's rushing yards, the line's at 15.5 to Vegas. We've got it at 21. And Russell Wilson rushing yards, I think, could make a big difference here because we have him running 7 times for 47 yards. I know that's not a ton of yards, but that could certainly make a difference when the team has to pay so much attention to him. Because I'm sure that Bill Belichick is well aware of the fact that he needs to try to take away the running game. But they have so many weapons and threats just within the running game alone that it's going to be very difficult to do that. And I think it's also compelling and interesting to note that Russell Wilson just played the worst game of his entire career, and the Seahawks still were able to find a way to win that game. Even if you take away the deep passing game, if you contain and take away his ability to run, this Seattle Seahawks team can thrive without him. You can't say that about Tom Brady. If Brady doesn't have a good game, Patriots aren't winning this game. If Wilson doesn't have a good game, it's possible that the Seahawks still win.
Is there anything in there about Marshawn Lynch, doing an obscene gesture or anything crazy like that?
Yeah, you can bet on whether or not when he scores a touchdown, he grabs himself, if you will. And that in terms of a wager is somewhere it's plus money. It's about 4 to 1 on your money that he will do that if he scores a touchdown or while he scores a touchdown. What I think is interesting there is he doesn't care about the fine, but he certainly, I think, cares about the 15-yard penalty that they've assured him he will receive if he does that and he goes in the end zone. I would say it's more likely than not that he doesn't grab himself. The only time I think that could make sense for him to do is if they're blowing out the Patriots at the end of the game at 15 yards really doesn't matter. In our predictions, though, he's actually the most likely MVP. We have him winning the MVP about 25% of the time in the simulations, totaling over 125 yards, more often than not scoring a touchdown. So it puts up big numbers. I just don't think there's any value in that he will grab himself just because, he loves doing that, as anybody who's seen the Conan video here recently would suggest and understand. It's not something that I think will help his team, and he has at least been team conscious in a lot of those situations.
Paul Bessire, PredictionMachine.com. Paul, of all the prop bets, which one is the wackiest? You've been doing this a long time. Which one do you look at and just go, seriously, this is where we're at?
Well, I mean, Deflategate's the one there's so much buzz, and so there clearly had to be prop bets about that. So the fact that I had to try to come up with some estimation of the number of times that the word deflated and balls will be used in the same sentence is a little insane, a little ridiculous. That line actually opened up at 2 and is shifted all the way to 3.5, which I think almost has to be an under then because they're going to stay away from having to focus too much on that. That's not it. Look, it wouldn't make either of these teams look very good. So I like the under on deflated balls references per sentence throughout the course of the game. I also did analysis on Katy Perry's hair color, Katy Perry's first song, whether or not Bill Belichick will have sleeves intact or not, and how many times Giselle Bundchen will be shown on TV. So there's plenty of other analysis on there that I basically spent an entire day looking into as well.
How do you do stuff like that? Like Armin's girlfriend is singing the national anthem, Adina Menzel.
Let it go,
Sure.
let it go.
So is she going to go long? What are we doing?
But I've got it broken down. I love the over. This is the second time in the last 6 years that's it that I've loved the over on the national anthem because usually the line's inflated, but it's gone under for the last 5 years. And I think this will go over, actually, because the lines come down. Dina Menzel sang for 2 minutes and 1 second at the MLB All-Star Game just around 7 months ago in Minnesota. Artists tend to go about 12% longer in these Super Bowls than they do other public performances. I'm projecting her to go 2 minutes and 18 seconds. And as an example of this, Jordan Sparks just went 22% longer for her national anthem in the Super Bowl than she did last week at the Pro Bowl, despite the fact it was the same venue, same song, same number of people, obviously, in the crowd at the time. And yet she milked it for the Super Bowl crowd and Super Bowl TV audience and not for the Pro Bowl.
Paul Bessire, PredictionMachine.com. Damn, he's good. So, Paul, tell us, who do you believe is going to win this game at PredictionMachine.com?
Yeah, 50,000 simulations of the game. We've broken it all down from a prop standpoint to the national anthem to the MVP. But the key to this is who wins the game, and it's the same thing as last year. 75% of the public is betting on New England to win, just like the public bet on the Denver Broncos to win and win relatively easily last year. And then in both cases, we like the Seahawks to win outright. Our predicted score: Seattle 23, New England 20, 57% of the time. Seattle wins this game straight up. So it's a lean toward the under, too, for those that are curious about that. But Seattle winning outright is the pick in the opinion. And for us, it does come down to the rushing game. 168 to 80 is the rushing yards difference in our projected box score, and that's where Seattle wins this game.
So it all depends whether or not there's enough skills on the sideline for Marshawn Lynch.
It's all about the Skittles and the action.
Hey, is there a prop bet as to whether or not Marshawn Lynch will eat Skittles?
There isn't anything related to Skittles, but I do have a kind of correlation to that MVP conversation with Marshawn Lynch, and that is you can bet on who the MVP will thank first in his speech afterward. Well, if it's Marshawn Lynch, which we think the value is in Marshawn Lynch to win the MVP based on all those numbers I just gave you, 12 to 1 on the MVP thanking no one, I think, is a good deal. He'll either thank no one or Skittles, and I'm not sure the NFL is going to stick around long enough to hear him to talk about a non-sponsor, so we might not even hear that.
There you go. Paul Bessire, PredictionMachine.com. Predict Machine on Twitter. Paul, as always, my friend, thanks for your time, man. Enjoy your Super Bowl Sunday.
All right, you too. Thanks, guys.